I know, I haven't posted a video since Tuesday. I've been extremely busy. We'll get to that in a minute. But for right now, this video is going to start off Tuesday afternoon. I've got Jeremy and Billy out in the shop working on putting my Malibu back together after we swapped out a set of lifters and a set of head gaskets. All of this work is in order to spin this engine a little harder and spray a little more nitrous to it, hopefully without destroying the engine. But the Malibu project is not the only project we've got on our plate. Billy is still trying to get ready for Mega Cash Days in just a month or so. And ever since he blew his engine up at Dragway 42 testing for No Prep Kings, he's been on a tangent of buying aluminum blocks. 2 so far, and I'm on my way to East Bank, West Virginia to pick up a 3rd one. So I top off the 64 with fuel and I prepare to make my 3-hour trip down 77 to see a buddy of mine who just recently posted a Rodeck 350 Plus aluminum block on Facebook for sale. After his first block was ordered in wrong by a machine shop, the second block he bought has a raised cam location. It also uses a big block Chevrolet cam core and it needs new sleeves. So that's 2 strikes so far on trying to get an aluminum block for his S10. Hopefully this won't be strike number 3. Anyway, the old 64 C10 made the trip down to East Bank, West Virginia without a problem. I backed up to the shop door at JB Hall's, and there it is, an almost brand new Rodeck 350 Plus aluminum block that's been polished and fully studded. I struck a deal with JB and we loaded in the back of the 64 and I turned and burned back to Ohio, getting caught in a little bit of rain on the way home. So I backed the truck in the lean-to and called it a night. However, I did stop in the shop to take a look at the Malibu, and it looks like it's almost back together. But unfortunately, the next morning, I find out there's a few little problems.
What is that?
This is the result of Uncle Bucko. You ever seen anything like that before?
But I've seen some busted stuff he's brought in before, but he blames it on somebody else.
Oh yeah, and that doesn't even compare to what he did to my freaking ground cable off the battery. He hooked my ground cable from the battery to the engine to a powder-coated bracket.
Oh!
And so Billy tried to start it this morning and melted the factory little ground cable from the battery over to the fender on my Malibu.
It was seeking a ground.
So Mark gets me fixed up with an indestructible vacuum tee that hopefully Jeremy can't break.
What do you think about this tee? You think Uncle Bucko tear us up?
Yes.
Oh, if he does, you let me know.
Mark even got me hooked up with this new ground cable for the battery.
Get you back in business?
I think so.
All right, well, that's good.
So then I head back to the shop to check on my brother. Well, if it isn't Uncle Buckwheat. Here, indestructible tee.
Is that?
Jesus Christ.
That's so that you can't tear that up. Now, Billy and Jeremy just swapped lifters and Cometic head gaskets on this thing. If they're having this much trouble with a vacuum line and a battery cable, I'm in trouble.
We're gonna take this line off and just plug it right into the line that was there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to shave it down a little bit because it's right on top of the distributor.
It's just a simple job. Like, this is the most simple job out of this whole project. This was the easiest thing. Now, obviously, I'm having my doubts here. But at this point, even Tony's scratching his head, and I think he has the same concerns as I do.
I don't know what you guys do in Ohio.
I went to pick up a block for him last night, and I come back to this.
Hey man, I'd appreciate a thank you.
My bad day was about to go from bad to worse. I walked in the house to get away from everything and find Paige. I'm having a bad enough day as it is.
Me too. But here we are.
Did you eat everything in my house?
Yep.
Did you poop in my bathroom?
Not yet, but I'm about to.
You know it's a bad day when Paige is the one cheering me up. I figure it's probably best for me just to get out of here for a little while and go see Uncle Bob. So we wrap this engine up and I hit the road in 64 to finish off the project I started yesterday, picking up this aluminum block and delivering it to the machine shop. I'm just hoping that the 3rd time is the charm for Billy's aluminum block purchase, because he's already bought 2. This time, I'm bringing this one back with my own stamp of approval before I laid out the cash. But I'm not a machinist, so Bob needs to take a look at this thing and make sure it is what it's supposed to be so we don't have another abortion like this sitting in the boring bar waiting for sleeves, or this brand new block that another machine shop ordered in with the wrong bore size. Needless to say, Bob's swimming in our problems right now up there at his machine shop. Even Billy's big block is up there, tore apart in a million pieces. So Bob sets the block up on his work table and starts taking measurements to see what this thing is and to see if it's going to work for our application. And our biggest concern right now is that the block will be able to be bored to 4125 without needing re-sleeved, like his last block that he bought. So far, all indications are that this block is going to work just fine. But Bob wants to wait until the block warms up tomorrow to check main bearing clearance. So me and June Pup went ahead and hit the road and head back home. We've got plenty of work to do back at the house, and it's almost time to start running beans, which means we need to get the combine up and running as soon as possible. It won't be long and we'll be sitting in line at the mill like everybody else. But right now I need to get back to the shop and check on my Malibu and see how things are coming with it. I found a really nice surprise waiting on me when I got home. My new personalized plates came in. So I stuck the new plate on the back of the car, went over the engine compartment real quick, and then backed the Malibu outside to let it warm up for a few minutes before I take it up the road. So far, so good. It sounds fantastic, and June Pup's just waiting to go for a ride. So I hop in and we take it up the road to finish warming the engine up a little bit and then go make a test hit. As soon as I turn that draggy on, June Pup takes up her strategic position in the back seat and prepares for a test hit.
What are we doing?
So I made a change other than just the lifters. I had a carburetor spacer, a 4-hole carburetor spacer underneath this carburetor. And ever since I put that billet crossbar nitrous plate on, it had a really bad whistle noise off idle. And it sounded like a freaking train. I mean, it was really whistling bad. And it only started doing that after I put that billet crossbar plate on. So I told the boys when they took this thing apart for me, I wanted to switch these spacers. Come over here, I'll show you. So this is the spacer that I've always used on the Malibu. Can you see it? So it's a 4-hole spacer, and the idea behind this is to take up any of this dead space below the throttle blades to increase velocity through the ventures of the carburetor. Mostly what I have found with these is they help drivability a little bit if you've got a carburetor that might be a little bit big for the combination, or if you need to increase booster signal. I've had really good luck with these, but unfortunately this spacer with that billet crossbar nitrous plate makes a lot of racket.
Racket?
Yeah, it whistles real bad. So Nitrous Express sent me some of these to put on display and explain to people. And what these are burst panels. I can't hardly get to them without a screwdriver. But these panels are on springs. You can see these springs. And if you have a nitrous explosion below the carburetor, these are designed so that these burst panels pop out under spring pressure and allow burst energy to escape from underneath the carburetor without bending the throttle blades and damaging the carburetor. And since they are almost exactly the same height, I told Kenny and Billy and Jeremy and everybody, when you take that thing apart and put it back together, I want to take this HVH 4-hole spacer off and replace it with one of these burst panels. One, because this thing was making a lot of noise, and for two, I'd like to have the reassurance that if something were to happen, if a nitrous solenoid were to stick open and I don't know about it, and I go to crank the engine and I have a major backfire, it won't damage the carburetor, and this thing resets itself. There's O-rings behind these plates.
That's like magic.
Magic?
No, I mean, like, it's like, what do you call it? Idiot proof?
So anyway, outside of the magic trick, the reason I'm taking this apart is because when I changed from the 4-hole spacer to the open spacer, I've lost a little bit of velocity through the venturi, and now the air-fuel ratio is showing lean on the gauge. You drag the engine down really fast on the gear changes, and what happens is that the air velocity that's flowing through the venturies, these holes are venturies, the air velocity flowing through the venturies slows down for a split second, and you lose booster signal. These are the boosters, these pieces here. And what happens is your air-fuel ratio will go lean for a split second, and it shows up on the gauge, and it definitely shows up in my eardrums because I hear the engine breaking up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes to the carburetor to richen it up and hopefully fix that problem. Not only do I plan on jetting the carburetor up, but I also want to swap out the 30cc accelerator pumps for 50s to hopefully help alleviate some of this bogging problem that I have off the foot brake. The 50cc pumps use different pump cams and also a different pump arm. Here you can see the difference between the 30 in my left hand and the 50 in my right. There's also a difference between gas and alcohol diaphragms for the pumps. Green is for alcohol, black is typically for gas. I swapped out both front and rear accelerator pumps and used brown cams instead of blue. Next, I jetted the carburetor up 2 jet sizes front and rear. After inspecting the bowl gaskets, I put the bowls back on and finally adjusted the accelerator pumps before reinstalling the carburetor on the engine and checking closely for leaks. I ended up working on this carburetor for almost a day and a half because I had another problem that I'll tell you about later in the video. But let's just say I wasted about a day and a half screwing around chasing my tail over a vacuum leak that I didn't know I had. We'll get to that later. But for right now, it's time to get the Malibu all cleaned up so me and June Pup can take it down to Edgewater to go test Friday night. But before we take it home and load it in the trailer, we decided to do a little photo op up at the local Chevy dealership. After that, it was time to bring the Malibu home, load it up in the trailer, and then head to Speedway to fill up some fuel jugs with E85. And finally, it's Friday, testing day at Edgewater Motorsports Park. Me, Vicky, June, and Scrappy all made it down there without a problem. After I backed the Malibu out of the trailer, I let the car sit out there and warm up for a few minutes, and then cracked the bottle open and turned the bottle heater on to bring the bottle pressure up. Next up, it was time to make a few adjustments to the carburetor, air the tires down, and get ready to make a lick. All right, so we're out here in Edgewater, and this is the first time I've had the car back to the track since we put the new converter in it. Bubba up at Perfect Converter Company built me a new 9.5-inch converter for this car that I can lock up while I'm making a pass. The old converter was basically just built to lock up for overdrive for gas mileage purposes and efficiency, but this one, the clutch is heavy duty enough where I can go ahead and lock it while I'm making a pass. And he also loosened the converter up a little bit so that on motor it's 60 foots and launches a little bit better. It makes it a little bit easier for me to cut a light, because before the converter was so tight, the car was really lazy leaving the starting line unless I was on nitrous. So the first thing I want to do tonight is make a pass on motor and see where we are on motor. Then we'll turn one kit on, then we'll turn both kits on, and then we'll turn both kits on and lock the converter. We'll just see what happens as we progress tonight. So that's the plan. The car's ready to go, I make it through tech, and then it's time to head straight to the staging lanes to make my first pass. And I got to admit, I'm pretty excited to see what this car is going to do with this brand new converter and this new nitrous kit. The old Malibu sounded clean and crisp in the burnout, and I can tell that it likes this new converter, but I was really impressed when I hit the gas. The Malibu with the new converter from Bubba Rafferty at Perfect Converter Company made a best 60-foot, best eighth mile, and best quarter mile on motor that it's ever made.
How was it?
Really good.
What's the numbers?
So that was the best 60 foot the car has ever made on motor.
Yeah.
It was a 160 with a 6.
Yeah.
Before, I think it was going like 174. It was really struggling to leave the starting line before. It was like 170. I think the best it's ever gone is like 168. And that was in like perfect conditions. So it just went 160 with a 6 and 758 with an 8 in the 8th at 89 miles an hour. That's the fastest it's ever gone to the 8th. And it went 12 flat with a 6 at almost 111. So that's by far the fastest pass it's ever made on motor. So we're doing really good. In preparation to turn the nitrous on, I decided to make a shock adjustment.
Is there a problem?
No, there's no problem. It's just that it left really good that pass. And I think when I hit it with some nitrous, I'm going to have to tighten the front shocks up, or else it's going to wheelie and unload the tire.
Oh.
So I'm going to jack it up and tighten the rebound on the front shocks.
Well, I always get nervous when I see a jack coming out. That's the It's the worry wart in me.
Adjusting the rebound on the Viking dual adjustable front shocks only takes a few seconds by turning some knobs at the bottom of the shock base. All right guys, so we made our first hit and it went really good. I've tightened up the front shocks and I'm just gonna turn the first stage of this nitrous kit on. Now the first stage is only jetted to about 100 horsepower. So it's a real mild, soft hit. I'm only gonna ramp it in for half a second. So it's gonna roll back on the tire, pick the front end up and take off. But it's not gonna be real violent. I just wanna see what it runs on just the 100 kit. And then when we come back, I'll turn the second one on. We'll go from there. That was only on a 100 shot. That's only on one stage. 146, 60 foot, and it rattled the tires when it left and it spun. So I want to look at the video and see if there's something I need to do there. But 688 at 97 in the 8th and 1094 to 120. So it went 1094 at 120 on just a 100 horse shot. It went 1069 before on 200.
So you're impressed?
Yeah, that's really good for only a 100 shot. Like, it's gonna fly when I turn the second stage. Now, before I go ahead and turn both these kits on, I want to slide a new plug in number 3 cylinder. Let's check in the plug. I'm gonna put a fresh plug in it before I go up and make another hit. This has got a bunch of street driving and testing on it.
Yeah.
So it's not a real good indicator, but I just want to see what it looks like, make sure I don't have any straps burn off. I'm gonna go ahead and put a fresh brand new plug in that cylinder and I'll go up and make a hit on the second kit. We'll see what it looks like when I get back. Now with a 100 horsepower shot in the first stage and 200 in the second stage, this car is going to be on a 300 shot of nitrous by the time the car is about 100 feet out. I can program the nitrous to come in softly using my Nitrous Express Max 5 controller, which I can make adjustments to with the laptop or by the screen mounted on the shifter in the car. Now that this old small block's got Cometic head gaskets, head studs, Johnson Isky roller lifters, a stud girdle, and the seat pressure cranked up on the valve springs, it should be ready to make a 300 shot of nitrous pass and turn 7,400 RPM through the traps. And if all goes well, a new personal best tonight at Edgewater Sports Park.
Malibu. That's good.
Just as I stuck the Malibu into third gear, the engine lays down. When the engine began to lose power, I lifted off the gas and coasted through the finish line. When I got back to the pits, I checked everything out, and I think I've got a major problem on my hands. It was time to load the car up and bring it back to the shop to check everything out. All right, everybody, welcome back. I know it's been a few days since I posted. I apologize for that. It's been difficult. It's been difficult to film here every day for the last week. Just real quick, I just touch on it. We've had a lot of problems this week. I've chased my tail a lot, and none of it would translate into very good content. It's been one thing after another with the Malibu since we fired it up for the first time after we put the engine back together. Unfortunately, the battery cable incident happened, and it went downhill from there. Valve train flying apart. Vacuum leaks like you saw in the video where I jetted the carburetor up. Well, I spent the entire next day chasing my tail. I understand maybe moving the jets 2 sizes up, and I did that, and it wasn't enough, and it should have been. I went up 4 jet sizes, and it still wasn't enough. I ended up 6 jet sizes bigger, and the air fuel finally came down to where I wanted it, but the engine still wasn't performing like it should. And I was having some problems with the engine breaking up just on motor. It wouldn't even hardly run on motor. And it turns out one of the rocker arms had come loose. The stud girdle had a stripped bolt hole. The stud girdle came loose, a rocker arm backed off, and then the ignition box was giving trouble. I had a digital 6AL in it, and as you can see, I have removed that flaming pile of excrement, and I will never put one on again. I replaced it with an old style 6AL box, which I've never had a problem with. So between the rocker arm being fixed, and I've still got valves that needed readjusted, but I had one rocker arm that almost fell off. I had I had the ignition problem, and then I chased my tail for almost an entire day chasing this carburetor issue. One of the fittings was loose on a fuel solenoid. So the car had a vacuum leak, and I was trying to tune the carburetor around a vacuum leak that I didn't know that I had. And unfortunately, I wasted almost an entire day and a tank of fuel doing that. I feel like a total idiot, but it is what it is. It happened. Like I said, it would be boring for you guys to sit there and watch me for an entire day chase my tail, screwing around, trying to get an air-fuel ratio reading out of this carburetor that I know it should be making, and it's not. And I knew it couldn't be just removing just that 1-inch spacer. Felt like I've just chased my tail all week and literally felt like I wasn't getting anything accomplished. But I did manage to get the car back together. We did manage to go today. And of course, you saw how that turned out. Now, is the car hurt? No. I was very fearful that I had hurt the engine. Anytime you have a nitrous car that's making a nice hard pull and then all of a sudden it lays over and it starts to die, immediately let off. Do not hold the throttle down and just run it out the back door thinking it'll clear out. It won't. I made a critical error, and I knew that I had already done this. I knew going into this testing session today that I may have a problem with this, and I kind of forgot about it until I made that pass. And on the return road on the way back, I was thinking about what in the heck just went wrong. And I want to show you guys what I did wrong. And I kind of knew that I did it, but I didn't really have a choice. I'll explain. So all of my nitrous bottles that I use on the Malibu have a -6 bottle nut. However, I still have 3 or 4 bottles here that still have a -4 bottle nut. I haven't replaced them all yet. I replaced like 4 or 5 of them, but I've still got 3 or 4 bottles here with a -4 bottle nut. Since I only have these 3 bottles left that have nitrous in them that are full, I took those with me today. And that's why they're still full, because they've got -4 bottle nuts on. So since I didn't have any -6 bottle nuts to replace these with, Billy went with Tony to an undisclosed location to race this weekend. And he took all the -6 bottles with him, which they were all empty. He was going to have them filled. So I used this. This is a -4 to a -6 adapter. And here's the problem. Okay, you see how big that -4 hole is? Look how big it is on the other side, the -6. I know it's a little bit hard to see. The problem is when you take a -4 bottle nut and you attach a -6 nitrous line to it, like this one here. The problem is when the nitrous comes out of the bottle, it expands from that -4 fitting into the -6 line, and when nitrous expands, it freezes internally inside the nitrous line. And on a 100 shot, which I made to pass, earlier in the day on a 100 shot, it wasn't a problem. And maybe it was. I mean, it went 120 miles an hour, but there's a possibility it could have gone 123, 122. It wasn't laying over real bad or anything like that, but there's a possibility that 1094 at 120 could have been 1089 at maybe 123. But it didn't lay over, you know. So I went up and I went to make that pull, that pass with both stages lit. And the two combined would be a 300 shot of nitrous. And when you're flowing that many pounds per hour of nitrous through a dash 6 line, that little restriction in that dash 4 will allow that nitrous to expand when it comes out of the dash 4 fitting, and when it expands, it freezes, it gets cold. It's like a refrigerant, just like R134A in your air conditioning. You know, it's, you know, you've got like a expansion tube, and when that refrigerant comes through the expansion tube and expands, it gets cold, and that's what makes your air conditioning cold. Well, nitrous kind of does the same thing. When it expands, it gets extremely cold, and that's what it does when it comes out of the plate. It expands and it gets extremely cold. But when it expands in that fitting, in that dash 4 fitting, and expands out into that dash 6 line, it can literally freeze the line closed. And I think that's exactly what happened. So what are we going to do to rectify that? Well, I'm going to go to Jegs first thing in the morning and see if I can't get some dash 6 fittings for my NX bottles. Nitrous Express already sent me a box of them, but I don't think I got enough to change all my bottles. I think I already used up all the ones that I had. And usually Billy and I are together, so I wasn't really concerned about it. But when he took off to go one place and I took off to go another, and we split the bottles, he took all the dash 6 line bottles, and I only had the dash 4s, which they were the only ones that had nitrous in them. And so I kind of got myself in a pickle tonight down at Edgewater. But fear not, I'll be back tomorrow. Vicki and I are going to National Trail Raceway, our home track right down the road here from our house. And we're going to take part in the Jack's Wax Street Fever trick-or-treat bash down here at National Trails. We're going to be down there tomorrow. I think it starts at like 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, something like that. And it's just a big test and tune with a car show type of deal. Just a laid-back situation where there's going to be trick-or-treat for the kids and stuff like that. So I'm going to run into Jegs in the morning, get a dash 6 bottle nut, or a handful of them if I can get them. And I'll switch these bottles out, and we're going to try again tomorrow. I can tell you that when that second stage came in, this thing started to roll. And I mean, you can really kind of see it in the video, but when I put it in second gear, it really started to pick up speed. And then as soon as I stuck it in high gear, it just laid over and I let out of it and coasted through. So tomorrow's a new day. We're going to try it again. I got a lot of really good news coming at you for the video. I'll probably do another video tomorrow into Sunday. We've got some really good things coming up. I've got some new carburetors here from ATM that I'm going to be testing here pretty soon. I got a lot of really neat things coming that you guys are going to enjoy, I think. So that's going to be it for tonight, guys. We'll probably put up another video tomorrow of the event down here at Trails. So see y'all maybe tomorrow. Good night.